Well, good morning. Um, I'm looking around the room. I'm thinking it's great to see so many new faces, and great to see everybody just having a good chat. That's essentially what our cafe events are all about. We're here normally on a Sunday morning, and we do church. This morning is about just inviting a couple of people to share their story, for us to hear about that, be able to chat about it, and to enjoy the tea and coffee. I hope you have a good cup of coffee or tea in front of you. Enjoy the nibbles on the table. They are there for you to munch through. Keep a lookout for the little tiffin with a white layer of icing. They are a hazel delight, and they're not hazelnut, by the way, but the lady who made them is hazel, and I love her for them, and because she's a legend as well. Anyway, I'll not go on about those, but watch out for those. A couple of housekeeping things just to kick us off. We do have children's work going on this morning. If your child is a toddler, there's a creche in the room just behind me, off the corridor to the right, and that will be a place where you can just drop your toddler off, and they'll have a good time in there. There's a proper creche next door to that, further down the corridor, and you'll see that's glass paneled, so you can see that. So if you've got a baby or a little one who you feel is just being a little bit of a distraction to those around you, just honestly, you can stand up and just go and take them there. No worries. We also do have a children's work for children from reception to year 3. So if that's you, then please head upstairs. If you're new, there'll be a Blast Kids leader just in the foyer by the glass doors there, who will show you where to take the children. Wow, yeah, so also some great church family news. We really like to celebrate big events, and nothing can be quite as big as a 60th wedding anniversary. That's Peter and Betty. Peter and Betty, are you here? Yes. We've got some flowers for you as well. It's nice to surprise you, and you did try and keep that quiet. But isn't it great? 60 years of marriage, 2 people committing their lives to one another faithfully. For all those years. Also, Corrie and Craig are celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary. They can't be with us this morning. They're in Spain. But hello. Actually, could everyone just wave at the camera for me? It's at the back. Happy 40th anniversary. And we're so joyful that you two have been married for so many years. The last point of housekeeping is what we're going to do, in a second I'm going to invite Mike and Gwen to come up and sit on the comfy sofa and tell us about their lives. But after a little while, what we'll do is we have the opportunity to ask them questions. And the way we do that is through a website called slido.com. That slide is going to appear on the screen behind me. So if you're technically savvy and want to take a little QR code thingy of that will take you to the website, and on the website, you can ask any question you like. And what happens, it's really quite clever, is your question will appear on a screen that everybody can access, and if you like a question, Mike, what color socks are you wearing? You can do a little thumbs up next to that question, and it will kind of pop further up the list of questions. So it's quite an interactive thing. You can see what other people are asking. You can ask your own question, and you can do that anonymously as well. If you don't have to sign it, Phil Vellacott, 39 Children Road. You can just put your question up there. So hopefully you can access that now. So, without further ado, I'm going to invite Mike and Gwen to come up. Can we just give them a warm welcome? Thank you so much. And you're joining us from Bournemouth, is that right?
Yes, that's right.
And how long have you been in Bournemouth?
Well, we've been back there about 20 years.
About
we're
20.
from there originally, but we travelled around in different ministries over the years. But
Wow.
So about 20 years and back to the south coast.
Brilliant. And a nice part of the country.
It's a lovely area.
Yeah. Are you a beach nut?
Well, when you can get there, yes, but when the weather's good.
Yeah.
But of course, it's the greatest football team in the.
Are you a Bournemouth
nation.
supporter?
Yeah.
Oh dear. Sorry.
We could have gone for.
Joe, could you just come and just take their place because?
Do you have counselling?
Yeah. Okay. So that's slightly taken me aback. I didn't find that out about you before I asked you to come here. But never mind. We'll put that behind us. Okay. Let's just ask about your story, because that's really what we're interested in. Mike, just tell us about your early life. Start from there, and your interests, and how that kind of led into a career and things.
Yeah. Well, I was born in Liverpool actually, but my father was a musician, professional musician, and so they moved down to Bournemouth for an orchestra he was in, and so brought up in Bournemouth as a kid. And, a happy childhood, no sort of inkling that I would have been an alcoholic by my mid-20s. Happy kid, loved school, probably for the wrong reasons. I loved football and music. I learned to play the trombone at school. But left school, and I think that's probably where, things started to go wrong. I got a job on a newspaper, which as time went by, I did quite well. But started to... even, I guess, about 18, started to gravitate towards heavy drinkers on the newspaper. And just to try and speed this up.
Was that colleagues?
Yes, that's right. It's quite a drink, especially back in the 70s, as it was. A real drinking culture then. And but really with two career paths, because, as I say, I learned to play the trombone at school. And then started to work in a band, getting paid. But again... whether it's genetic, my dad was quite a heavy drinker, but I started getting into heavy drinkers in the newspaper business and the music business too. But positively, it was in the band where I worked, where there was this very attractive girl singer called Gwen.
I'm glad you said Gwen, actually.
And so, things took their course, and we settled down, and then I'm trying to speed this up. And family came along, so we had 2, then 3 children. But as the years went by, I was sliding more towards heavy drinking. And I often say it's hard to know with a drinking thing when you go over the boundary from being a heavy drinker to an alcoholic. But certainly as the years went by, so looking at my mid-20s now, Gwen could certainly see the signs. Everyone could see the signs. That I was getting more and more irresponsible. Parenting is hard. It's easy to wimp out, as I did, and just do your own thing. And, so looking back, it was totally irresponsible. So totally irresponsible that I just started to like the life of drink and, when being in the wrong company, simply because it was what I wanted to do. So being a dad and being a husband, that's another thing, that takes guts.
And was that because culturally it was okay, or because you were attracted to that? I mean, what drew you into that culture?
I think in hindsight, I feel that people drink for different reasons and drink heavily for different reasons. Some because they want to erase some pain from the past. Others because coping with depression or whatever. With me, it was totally a social thing. And looking back now from a spiritual aspect, I just couldn't understand why I was here. I mean, the greatest start in life is to have Christian parents where they tell you actually been made by God, you're loved by God, there's a purpose to life. Looking back, myself and Gwen will speak for herself too, we didn't have that assurance that we were loved by God. There was a purpose. And so it came to the point where I was earning good money on the newspaper, and people looked, especially towards the dark end of the drinking, that the people look at Mike and say, what is wrong with him? He's got a lovely wife and kids, and he earns good money, and what is wrong? And I didn't know. And it certainly wasn't because I didn't love my family, but there was this longing that I had. I couldn't explain it at the time. And so I started to drive poor Gwen round the bend, with my behavior.
And so it's almost a existence question, an existence, what am I doing here? Which,
yeah.
In some ways, it kind of hits us all. I'm certainly kind of, I have to be honest, I'm at that stage where my boys are late teens, and you kind of find yourself almost at the end of your useful life, having raised your children, and and they're leaving home and not wanting to hang around you, and you have to reevaluate what's purpose, what am I living here, because actually raising children is a massive part of your life. But then, even as a Christian, I'm thinking, hang on, that massive part is gone. So I imagine there's even...
Yes, there are many purposes, to have a family, to have a career, to enjoy sport, to enjoy food, all these things, and they're great, and many of them legitimate. But there is a longing within us, and I couldn't analyze it at the time.
Yeah.
And I guess I was probably certainly late 20s, when I just realized that this, I look back and see there was a threefold grip on my life. I love the flavor of drink, and I love being drunk, and I love being with hooligan drunkards. And so by now, I've admitted the fact that I've got a problem. And so Gwen would say to me on one occasion, Mike, why didn't you go to AA, Alcoholics Anonymous? And I said, well, they'll tell me to stop drinking, won't they? Well, she said, yes. But, so there was that awful dilemma. I wouldn't, I couldn't, and so there was a grip. Yeah. And so there's this tremendous tussle. We see it all the time in this Liam Payne, this young guy who's died just recently. There's always more going on. So no amount of success or fame or whatever it is can really explain what's the supreme purpose of our life here.
And Augustine, one of the really early church, I think, archbishops, kind of said, we are restless until we find our rest in God. And he came from quite a similar background where, he remembers his kind of story was hooliganism, actually. He was a well-known hooligan as a young man. And in reflecting on those years, like yourself, there's restlessness, deep restlessness. Yeah. So was that putting a strain on your marriage?
Not half, yes. Well, Gwen's probably the best person to...
Gwen, do you want to explain a little bit from your perspective what was going on in those days?
Yeah, I think when Mike and I met, we were in the same big band, as it was known then, and everyone would have a drink, but it was under control to a certain extent, and we would go home together. But the danger came when discos came in. A lot of musicians got put out of work or move on, and Mike went and did the shows in Bournemouth, and I'd always sung with my brother, and he happened to be in the same big band. That was one of the reasons I auditioned and got in there. And we moved on to Bournemouth Pavilion in the resident band. But Mike and I weren't playing in the same venue, and so I drove myself there and came home. He went separately in his car. Okay. And the danger came, he didn't come home. Wow. And so with the others, there would be, nightclubs in Bournemouth and things, and that's where he gravitated to. So over the course of time, he wasn't coming home. He'd come home any time, any hour, and what have you. And I could see the change that with alcohol, it's an addiction, it's an illness that takes over, the same as drugs or anything really, that can really take over. And I knew he had a problem, but he wouldn't accept, in the early days, he had a problem. And so, it was very hard. I'm very grateful. We had 3 daughters when things got really bad. But, I'm so grateful. They didn't see him when he did come home or fall through the door or be sick or ill, and all the things that go with someone who's had too much to drink. They were kept from that, and I am really grateful. But even they knew a change when their dad was eventually converted. But it was tough. Now, I have to give credit to my parents because they were my babysitters, they were my go-to, and they were lovely parents. They were God-minded, but not Christians, and so I hadn't been brought up knowing about there was a Savior, and how I could be changed, how my sins could be forgiven. I wasn't an alcoholic, but I wasn't a great person. I'd made mistakes. I think growing up was tough then. It's certainly tough now. And, we all make mistakes, but, they were my go-to, and they backed me all the way. They would do the babysitting when I was working. And my going out to sing was my escape in the evenings when I was with my brother. I'd always sang with him, and that carried on while Mike was doing his separate music with shows, even cruises, and things like this. So it was very separate. We lived in the same house, but things were getting really hard, and I became quite scared of him when he came home, which isn't where I wanted to be at all.
No.
But there was going to be a plan was coming that I knew nothing about, which I thought was absolutely impossible.
Yeah.
How could Mike be changed unless every pub, every nightclub was, I don't like to say this, blown up in Bournemouth? I thought if it was all taken away, he might stand a chance, but it so gripped him. All the car crashes, his license being taken away, but the Evening Echo still keeping him employed, although he didn't do much. He was on the circulation area. He still had a job. He still, as a musician, great trombone player, and the shows wanted him. And how he managed it, I don't know. How he drove home when he did come home in the early hours or the next day. He was never involved with any people in car accidents, but he hit cars, and he still he had no control. He was out of control.
Wow.
And anything I said. And it came to the point when I would just cry out, God, help. I didn't know who I was talking to, but I believed there was a God, but I didn't know anything about Jesus. I knew he was in the Bible. I'd learned about him.
So how old were you when it was just at this point of just going completely pear-shaped?
I would say, we're both the same age. So, in the mid-20s, I could see it was pretty hopeless, but we had 3 daughters at that time.
Wow.
Later on, in the next life we had that's coming up, stay tuned. We did have another daughter as Christians. So anyway, it was hard, but from the middle 20s, really. The signs were there before, but it was hard going on. But
so Mike, take us to that point where. Well, let's move on. At that point, you've lost your license. You're coming home. Gwen's scared of you.
Yeah, I think it often. I mean, I look back actually, and am thankful that something maybe just come to a crisis. I think, in a sense, everyone has to come to that in life before they really begin to see God. And there was a number of things. I mean, yes, I lost my license. How I got away with it for so long, I don't know. I just be paralytic every day, every night, and fall into the car. Eventually, I lost my license. The police took my license off me. for drunken driving. Even my own newspaper had to print the headline, newspaper man 3.5 times over the limit. So there were steps to that crisis, and then I got my license back from the police, and I remember thinking, oh, I've got to be good now, and tried so hard to change, but it wasn't long, months before I'm back in the same position, falling into the car, weaving home. So the inevitable happens, another court case coming up. And so it's then I think, wow, and I remember even in my own heart sort of crying out, not knowing where I was crying to. So it was absolutely desperate. I'd come to the point where I was accepting I was going to die. I'd either die in a road accident or just drink myself to death. My health was going. So all was dark and hopeless. In fact, I would wake up as though there was a ton weight on my chest. It was just a feeling of doom. So absolutely hopeless, couldn't change. But God was at work. And what happened is that on the newspaper now, a desk was slotted in right at the side of mine. And in came this young, bright, cheerful man. And you couldn't have had a greater contrast because he would come in cheerful and bright, and I would drag myself in with a hangover. But he used to have a Bible on his desk. I thought, that's rather weird. But he liked football. I thought, well, he can't be that bad if he likes football. But he was this religious person, And now, bit by bit, I would hear about Jesus. And so this young guy would come in. And we used to have some rather unusual characters come into the newspaper. And one of them I remember so clearly. He was a little Scottish atheist. He's about 5 foot high with this long grey hair, grey goatee beard. And I always think he looked like a mini Billy Connolly, And he was a staunch atheist, and there was this debate going on between him and this young Christian guy. And this little Scotsman was saying, now, see you, Jimmy, there's no God. And the young Christian guy was saying, yeah, there is a God, it's Jesus Christ. And I remember turning around and to both of them saying, now, to the atheist, why don't you belt up? You'll never know there's no God until you die. And why don't you belt up? You'll never know there is a God until you die. And that was it, the great philosopher had spoken. The great wise man whose life was collapsing around him, But bit by bit, I was hearing about Jesus Christ. And another little link, or little chain, is that he was the editor, Paul now, this young guy, was the editor of his youth magazine in his church. So every month he would come and say, Mike, could you check this through for spelling? Could you proofread it for me? So I was reading all this Christian stuff. And what really caught my eye, it was just a one-frame cartoon. Now, it's speaking in this little one-frame, it was very clever actually, little one-frame cartoon, speaking about the coming of Jesus Christ. The world was going to end. In fact, there was a double-decker bus, and the front of the bus said, end of the world. That was the destination, end of the world. And it was in the old days when there'd be a conductor on the back of the bus holding onto a handle. And a guy was running for the bus was pulling away, and the conductor was just saying, his hand was like that, just a 2-word caption that said, too late. Now, I remember thinking, if all this stuff is true, if there's a God, if there's a judgment day, heaven and a hell, if Christ is coming again, too late for me. But no idea I was taken on board. So all these things were going in without me realizing it. Well, to cut to the chase, really, it was the most glorious day ever. It was September the 8th. It was a long time now, 1979. And it was a rare day. I'd not been drinking. I don't know why. But it was a quiet Saturday, and there was just this young guy and myself sat in the office, and I found myself asking questions about his faith. But he turned around, and very bravely, he said to me, Mike, you can't carry on like this, can you? I knew I couldn't, And then he asked me a question. He said, do you believe in God? And I remember saying, well, who knows? My mind thought, yeah, probably there is a God, but who knows? And then he asked, do you believe in Jesus Christ? And I thought, well, there probably was someone, but again, what's the relevance? 2,000 years ago, 2,000 miles away, I just couldn't get the connection. But then he said, Mike, why didn't you ask God to forgive your sin, come into your life, ask him to take over. Now, I didn't have a clue what he was talking about, but there was something stirring within me. Went out of the newspaper. I got down on my knees in this little toilet, little cubicle. I prayed the worst prayer ever. It'd be in the Guinness Book of Records for worst prayers. It was, God, in brackets, if you're there, help. Came out the loo, as you do, and he was dying to know how I prayed. I didn't tell him, but by time to go home, see Paul, got in the car, drove home. I just broke down in tears of absolute joy. I knew there was a God who loved me, was real. I knew that Jesus was real. I knew that he died, rose again. I knew if I crashed the car and die now, I'm not going to hell, I'm going to heaven. So I just drove the car home, and then I'm thinking the hard part now is trying to explain this to Gwen. And so I told her about the mechanic. I've just gone about the mechanic. I'll hand over to you because Gwen's car was being serviced by a mechanic we knew, this young guy. And so I drive in my car to pick up Gwen's car to be, So we got to the mechanic's place. Now, bear in mind now, I'd just been forgiven. I knew that God had wiped out all my sins, all my past. I knew I'd changed. So it's a sense of relief. And we got to the mechanic, and he gave me the bill. I thought, it's not enough. I wanted to give him twice as much. I wanted to hug him, and he was really ugly. But I wanted to hug the whole world. And I thought, wow, if God could love me, he loves the whole. So from that moment on, I was just overwhelmed by this sense of forgiveness and love and acceptance. But Gwen was absolutely bewildered, and maybe I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, Mike went out to work one way, the old Mike, and when he came home at tea time, he was glowing. Absolutely. He had a white shirt on. He was smiling. His eyes were clear. They weren't bloodshot. He looked completely different. And he said, "You'll never guess what's happened." I said, "What?" He said, "I've become a Christian." I said, "What?" I said, we live in it was very Christian country back in 1979. And I said, we are Christians, and we live in a Christian country. He said, "No." He said, "I haven't been drinking. I don't need to drink. I don't know how, but Jesus," he said, "I called on God. Jesus has taken this from me." And I honestly thought, oh, he's off on one now. I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Paul told me about Jesus." I thought, who is this Paul? How come he's told him something and he's saying he's changed? And I was worried, but he did look so different. He just didn't look like the disheveled, bleary-eyed, and obviously, he didn't normally come home at tea time anyway, but he was there and just looked so different. And I was very wary. Now, we were both playing in different venues that night, and I went off to the pavilion, and he said, "I'll see you later." And I thought, yes, I'm sure, not till tomorrow sometime, probably when you decide to roll home. And my parents were babysitting, and anyway, I thought no more of it, but when I drove home, Mike's car was in the drive. He'd got home before me. My parents' car had gone, and I'm thinking, my dad, who did have heart problems, I thought, oh my goodness, it must be my dad. So I ran indoors, and I said, "What's wrong?" He said, "Nothing's wrong. Your parents have gone home." He said, "Look, I told you, I'm different." I said, "Oh, this is strange." He said, "I haven't drunk." He said, "I had a Coca-Cola tonight, but playing the trombone, you need something, some liquid." He said, "I don't need it." I said, "I know it's gone. Jesus has done something to me. I don't need alcohol." Well, I just said, I don't know what's going on. I'm going to bed. In the morning, I woke up to this strange noise downstairs, pleasant noise. It was whistling from the kitchen. And he was downstairs. The sun was shining through the kitchen. And he said, "Would you like a cup of tea?" And I thought, who is this? And he said, "Isn't it great? Isn't life great? I know I've been changed." Boy, it scared me. It really scared me. And if to have someone change, going out the door one day, coming home the same evening, a different person, And everything that I'd want him to be, he was now being, you know. And anyway, at this stage, and I just didn't understand. I had no idea of people being born again. I had no idea that Jesus had the power to change people's lives. I'd never heard of people having a new start, a new life in Christ. All these things would come, which Mike very shortly started to tell me how I needed to change. Do you want to take that one back? What happened with Paul the next day when you went into work? Because you did tell him.
Well, Paul said he might use a Bible. So he gave me this Bible, and now I'd never read it before. I couldn't see the relevance of it. But it just gripped me. This is God's word. And so, but a couple of verses in particular that it said, if anyone is in Christ, if anyone becomes a Christian, they're a new creation. The old is gone, the new has come. And then Jesus spoke about you must be born again. And so really it was just, I just devoured it. So we went through it, you know. But the fact is, I kept coming up to Gwen and saying, Gwen, look at this. Sort of chasing around the house, jumping out of cupboards. You're going to hell, Gwen. No, oh, hang on, don't start on me. You know, you're the sinner. And I mean, really, the irony, really. You can understand why she was so upset, so annoyed at that. I left her out of my life through drink, and now I'm in the church culture, and she's still outside.
So here, Gwen, I'm just going to ask you a little bit of a question that's in my mind at this point. Were you very cynical about this?
Yeah, I thought it was. I knew there was something powerful. I said to him, "What power has this Paul got over you? Is it voodoos or something?"
Because it sounds a little bit cult-like, doesn't it?
It was creepy,
yeah.
really creepy. And now I'd gone to Sunday school only for a short while as a 9-year-old with my brother, and that will come into the story in a minute. But so I'd taken my children to Sunday school at a Methodist church. Again, never heard the gospel.
But you were
I know it changed.
But you were the good person here.
Well, good
in inverted commas.
Yeah.
You were the good person here, and Mike is the alcoholic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's telling you to change.
Yes, he's going round.
Okay,
And
so I
don't want
understand
you to go to hell. And I'm saying to him, but you are the black sheep of the family.
Yeah.
Why have I got to change?
Wow. And
but
Mike, I'm going to ask you a question as well, because obviously, alcoholism is an addiction, and not everyone who becomes a Christian is released from it like that. Do you want to just talk us through that a little bit? Because you're not advocating if you're an alcoholic here, become a Christian and that's it, or if you're addicted to drugs, become a Christian and that's it. What would your take on that be?
You're right, Phil. There are many who do commit their lives to Christ, and they still struggle for life, and so there's no set guarantee it can be delivered.
No.
For me, I mean, this is the power of any addiction, whether it's drink or drugs, is that they can't take away the craving. So AA do a great job, Alcoholics Anonymous do a great job, and others like them. But they can only say go one day at a time, and they can't. And I often see it like it's a weed that grows, and you can take the top of a weed off, unless you take the root out, it's going to grow again. But with me, it was the craving that was gone. So going back to the beginning, that longing that I had, what was that desire? That whether we call it to be loved, to know God, to know purpose, whatever it is, in a split second, that was it. So it was a greater love, and that's what there was a great Scottish theologian years ago spoke about. The power of sin is broken, or whatever it is, or a grip on us is broken, when a superior love takes hold of us. So my love and dependency on drink was overwhelmed by the love of Christ. I tasted heaven that day. I tasted the love of God that day, and that delivered me from the craving that gripped me before.
And when you say, forgive me, because I think in many ways we're looking at a miracle. This is your testimony of a miraculous conversion. When you say a taste of heaven, just give us an understanding of that, please.
Well, sometimes people say to me, what is heaven like? And it gives just symbolic things. It speaks about a new creation, a place where there's no sickness and war and hatred and death. So to have something come into your life that speaks about joy and not just happiness, but something that's lasting. So I remember thinking, will this last? Woke up the next day, will this last? And I was a very restless, Gwen would tell you, a very restless person, always get a fad for something, then something else, then something else. But this was constant, and here we are 45 years later. So what happened that day was something, and so it's not just about alcohol or drugs or sex or food. It is a longing that we all have for another world. And so I've never been to heaven, but something of that life. So when the Bible speaks about, the greatest verse, for God so loved the world, he sent his only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. So that day I began that other life. I began that everlasting life. But it's always a miracle. And so I often, because my girls later would say, Dad, I gave your story today at school. I said, what's wrong with giving yours? Because mine's sensational. But every single conversion is a miracle. In a sense, my conversion is easy. I knew I needed help. But for Gwen, she thought she was okay. But I think for most people, they're like Gwen. They think, we're okay. I'm not that bad.
So good girl Gwen is in inverted commas, is sat there with this little bit of a religious nutter in the house, telling you that you need to, from my perspective, I'm thinking, so there's a big hurdle of cynicism to overcome, and yet obviously you're sat here, not good girl Gwen, but Gwen, and what was the process? Mike's coming into the house, completely changed, miraculously changed, telling you that you need to get right with God as now the not good girl in the house. What's going on through your mind, and also, how does that happen?
Also, going to Bible studies, prayer meetings midweek,
wow.
Mike, and church twice on Sunday, not to where I was taking the girls for their Sunday school, but to Moordown Baptist Church in Bournemouth.
Wow.
And he was telling me things that I had never heard, and I'm thinking, where is he getting? And I'm getting this from the Bible. This is the Word of God. So it wasn't he was just saying things. He was living the life. He wanted to pray. He wanted to be at the prayer meeting. And he will say that suddenly, from the bright lights of show business and the parties and the bars and everything, he was now with grey-haired little old ladies praying for other people in the town of Bournemouth, and things like this. And so it was very different. And I did feel left out. I'd felt left out before, but I knew it was different. And in my band at the pavilion, they were all getting to hear about Mike, who was still having to play in the shows to get rid of our debt. In fact, he carried on for another year to get us back in the right colour in the bank, with all the money that he spent on alcohol. And so he came up as a topic one night in December. And they were all talking about him because he was well known for his drink, his friendliness, buy anyone a drink, and all the rest of it. And they were saying, and my brother was there as well, obviously, we were all chatting. And they said, what's happened then, Gwen? He's become a Bible basher. All he wants to do is talk about Jesus, and he's not drinking. What's wrong with him, And I said, I don't fully understand. All I know is that Jesus Christ has changed him in something that I thought was impossible. I really did. And he's changed him in such a wonderful way. And the young drummer, first of all, one of the musicians said, I expect he'll turn out to be a minister one day. And we all went, ha, ha, ha. Well, later he would be. Anyway, and then the young drummer said, and I bet you're going to become a Christian too, Gwen. And I said, oh, no, not me. I said, Mike needed to change. I don't need to change.
Yeah.
But on the way home that night, I was driving home, and a voice said to me, "Why have you denied me?" Just inside, "Why have you denied me?" I'm going back. I only went to Sunday school for, a certain amount of months when I was about 9 years old. My Sunday school teacher, who was lovely, she said, if anyone wants to own a Bible, you can do a Bible exam. And we looked at the life of Peter. I was 9 years old. I was now 31 years old, driving home. And this voice said, "Why have you denied me?" And I thought about Peter being told he was going to deny Christ. Just came into my head after all those years. For any Sunday school teachers or anyone that teaches children, keep going. It's such an important work because the seed is sown, however small, and that verse was it for me. And so I didn't say anything to Mike. I drove on home, and that week I was in turmoil. I was a sinner. I knew I'd done things wrong. We've all got skeletons in the cupboard. And this plagued me for just a week. This was 3 months after Mike's conversion.
Yeah. So when you say sinner, that's a sense of someone who's rejecting God, not just someone who's doing
rejecting
bad.
something, but also, if you like, the bad things I had done.
Yeah.
I might not.
Yeah.
I wasn't an alcoholic. I didn't have that problem, but I had a lot of problems, and life hadn't been straightforward. But I was just, anyway, a week later, I was at the church with my children, and they were doing something. It was December the 16th, 1979. I said to Mike, "Can you come to our church today, because the girls are doing something?" "Yes, okay, sure, I'll come with you." And there he was, sat there, and obviously it was different to him because they weren't preaching the gospel like they did where he went. But he was there, and they invited everyone up for communion. They did that, and obviously I went forward and got on my knees, not saved, but I just said, similar prayer to Mike, I just prayed, "Jesus, you've changed Mike. Please come into my life." And I got up, and I knew something had happened. And on the way home, driving home, I didn't say anything to Mike. I just felt this surge of joy. And I noticed the trees. I noticed so many things I hadn't. It's as though my eyes were open to what was around me. And I can remember going into my kitchen and looking at all the cups and saucers, ridiculous thing, thinking, wow, haven't we been blessed? Haven't we got a lot of things? That was the start. But that was December the 16th, 1979.
Wow.
And it was, for me, I knew something had happened. And we all as a family then went to Modern Baptist with Mike. And at the same time, our eldest daughter, who was at that time 11, had been given a Gideon's Bible at her new senior school. And she too had been seeking and was saved. So we all went with our 3 daughters. Later, much later, a couple of years later, we had Rebecca. But that's another story because our lives were going to change again, and God had to deal with me a bit later on over what was coming. But we were now a Christian family going to a great church, involved in everything, Bible studies, ladies' prayer meetings, coffee mornings, anything. Couldn't get enough. And I didn't want to sing anymore. What I desired as a child, I was a lonely child, and I just used to sing around the house, and I wanted more than anything, not to be famous, I just wanted to sing for a living. And I reached that goal and did it from the age of 14, I started singing with my brother. But until 31, that had been my job. But when I met Christ, I didn't want to go out. I wanted to go to church with my family. I wanted to come home and be with my family. Everything changed for the better. And we were now one in Christ and bringing our family up as we could, you know.
So take us through what happened next then.
Well, everything was fine. Mike had already started being asked, because what do you want to say about on the shows in the pavilion?
Yeah, well, first of all, well, what was wonderful is that God made us brand new individually, but made us brand new as a couple. And in fact, it was just before Christmas time. And, I always think back that we were, that first Christmas, we were like a couple of kids again, walking hand in hand doing Christmas shopping. So, and it's lovely to hear these long-standing marriages, and, apart from Jesus, we wouldn't have been like that. But we just love being together, even after all these years, and we love each other more than we ever did. So when, some people say, well, why does Jesus say to put him first before your loved ones? It's because when we put him first, we love each other more. So we got this brand new thing. So we're everything's so happy. Yet there's another stirring coming up, because I was at the time doing a large show in Bournemouth, and the orchestra was on stage, and I would be sat there night after night. And the first house, 2,000 people come in and go out. Another 2,000 people come in. And in between the two shows, instead of going to the bar, I would have my dinner jacket on, with bow tie, on the West Dip in Bournemouth, giving out tracts to the holidaymakers and back for the second show. But on the way out, I'd hear them speaking about the stars, mums and dads and the boys and girls. And I thought, who will tell them about Jesus? And so there was this burden growing, and at times it's as though I could see that auditorium with all those people sinking into hell. I thought, who will tell them about Jesus? And so this burden was growing, and I felt God just called me to give everything up, and wherever he takes us, just to go and speak about Christ, to go and preach the gospel. Never preached before, but maybe I'll just explain this. So there's one time, it was a break in the show, if there was maybe a certain act on the bill, and they didn't need a band, so I'd be in the band room, and I'd get a book out and start reading. And I was reading this book. It's by an evangelist called Oswald J. Smith. And he was speaking about another evangelist years ago who called Charles Finney, on his way to pick up his bride to get married. And on his way, of course, it was no cars, horses in those days, his horse lost a shoe. So he went into the local blacksmith to get a shoe for his horse. And someone recognized him. Oh, Mr. Finney, will you come and preach for us in our chapel? So he went and preached there. But the Spirit of God fell, and revival broke out. And then he records in the book, it was 6 months before he got to pick up his fiancée to get married. Now, you've got to be married to appreciate that. And then there was that sentence in the book, how many people will be willing to obey the Holy Spirit no matter what? And that sentence hit me like a rocket. I could hardly play the second show, and I just felt that God was saying, Mike, go. Give up everything, go wherever God takes you.
So, sorry, I'm just very aware that a lot of what you're saying, we don't, as a British culture, really relate to, because you're talking about God the Holy Spirit. You're talking about you're talking about revival. You're talking about a God who isn't remote. Yeah. And is that your experience? Is your experience a God who is very personal?
Absolutely. And always active in wanting others to know. And so I think what it was, Phil, is that if God should so love me, if this really is true, and again, I began to read the Bible, spoke about heaven, a hell, a judgment day. If that is true, then how can I love others and not tell them? Yeah. Like the young man who shared that with me. So in a nutshell, it was that pressure on me that no matter what the future might hold, I need to tell others. But the problem was, it was going to mean uprooting probably the family. Wow. And I think that's where Gwen began to sense, oh, hang on a minute, what might that be?
So I'm just aware of time. And does that mean you dropped everything and decided to go and tell people? What happened there?
I didn't want to lose what I had. Now, it's not that everyone's called to preach the gospel, but for me, I knew the way to be happy was to do whatever God wants us to do. So I read the Bible. Right, if I do what it says, that's the happy life. So I didn't want to lose that. So I've learned, I'm a slow learner, but I learned that the way to actually to joy is to do what God says.
Yeah.
But sometimes it means that people might misunderstand us. So poor old Gwen, she's always been on the rough end. So do you want to say, I came home late one night and you began.
Yeah, he phoned up after the show and he said, I'm so excited. He said, God's spoken to me. I'm going to see our pastor on the way home. And I said, it's midnight. He said, I know. He knows I'm coming. I'm going to go and see him. And then I come home and I've got something very important to tell you. So I said, okay, we'd been so happy for a year. Everything was fine, growing in the church. The kids loved it and everything. And when he came in, he said, I don't know what's in store, but God has told me to go to serve him. And I said, where? He said, I don't know, but I'm prepared to give up my job, give up our home, and go wherever he wants to go. And I said, but he hasn't told me. And I think this was the first time that I'd felt angry in a year and out of control again. I didn't understand. Anyway, I said, I'm going to bed. I was really upset. I have to say that. The next day, we were down the beach. I wasn't speaking to him. We had the children out in Bournemouth on a dinghy. And I actually said to him that night, maybe we're not supposed to be together after all. Maybe we're not supposed to be married. Wow. If God has called you, why hasn't he spoken to me? As we're out up to here in the water, Mike said something over there. And where he'd lost weight, where he no longer drank, that had gone back the year before, never again. His wedding ring flew off in the water. Now, it was still reeling my head what I'd said to him the night before. And I was demented. I'm like, no. Anyway, long story short, I said, we got to find it. And we had the kids, and we went back. My parents were in the beach hut, and my mum was saying, don't worry, we'll help you get another one. I said, no, you don't understand the conversation. What is going on here? I've asked for a sign. Is God talking to me? And his wedding ring has just gone in the sea. So anyway, I said to Mike, go into the lost property office, put your name down, please tell him. And the guy said, you know how many people lose their rings at sea? And I know, do this to humor my wife, The next day was Sunday. We were in church. I was beside myself because I didn't want us to not do something together, but I didn't know what was happening. Anyway, I prayed in church there in my head. I said, Lord, if you're calling me for whatever with Mike, give us the ring back. So we went back down to the beach that afternoon. We went back out to where we had been. And I'm praying, Lord, show us the ring, show us the ring. And it was packed. It was July. The beach was full. And as we started to walk back, one of the children said, is this it? And there were some rocks where you paddle. And is this it? And I went there, and there was his wedding ring under this rock. I don't know why nobody else didn't find it.
Wow.
It was for us. It was for me. And I knew from that moment on, God was calling me. He had to show me something, so I was prepared for what was to come. So there was a big skip, but yeah, I was on board. Whatever, let's go, and the excitement came. What was God going to show us? And a year later, he applied to Bible college. We left, went to Wales, and ended up serving churches in Wales. And
that is the most...
Incredible. The West End,
yeah.
and then as an evangelist. So the Lord was going to use us in different ways, but each time Mike would know first where we were being called, and it would be, you pray about it, and within 24 hours the Lord would have dealt with me. Yes, we're moving here, we're doing there. But God has never failed, and he's led. And here we are 45 years later, and still going.
That is just incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And it's there's that wonderful thing where God works through the miraculous, and he works through circumstances, and you look back and you say, actually, there is God's clear leading and his and that personal relationship being seen in circumstances, in people we know, in through his word that speaks to us. I don't know about you, but often it's that sense of you're reading your Bible and something you read just really strikes you, and really kind of gives a perspective on the circumstances you're facing, or what the circumstances you might be going into, and there's a powerful resonance with the Bible that just helps us
But most times,
know and
it's a
understand
struggle,
God.
Phil, I mean, we would love to think it was like that all the time, but most of our Christian life, most of 45 years, is plodding.
Yeah,
You know, it's not the sensational.
Yeah.
It's the ups and the downs, it's the struggles, the disappointments, the trials, you know.
yeah,
So we don't want to give the impression that
Yeah.
it happens every day. you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
But it's the most, I want to be the happiest person in the world. And even though the Christian life is tough at times, it's the greatest life.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Well, listen, what we're going to do is just take a break there. If you want if you want another refill of coffee, the stewards are going to come around and just see if you like. But we're also going to have the Slido QR code on the wall behind me. And if you've got some questions you want to ask, just do throw them into the mix. In a few minutes, we'll just come back. We'll probably take five minutes or so to ask you some of the good ones. And so we'll have a break now, and then come back to Gwen and Mike. Thank you so much, though. Yeah. Well, we'll. We'll just spend the next few. We've got some great questions up here, and thank you for sending them in. It'd be great to start. Well, we'll start with the first one. Do you feel having an addiction that you are always an addict?
I think, humanly speaking, yes. It's one of those. I mean, why some people can be, like, for instance, heavy drinkers, and others become alcoholics, we don't know. Maybe there's something genetic in that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it sounds gloomy, but once you're an addict, it seems to be medically that there is no cure for that. And that is why when Jesus Christ goes to the heart of it, there is that deliverance. Having said that, I think was one of the other questions about temptation to drink. And as you said earlier, Phil, that some people are not delivered from that, so it would be unwise to.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, there are many Christians who were addicted or have been addicted to alcohol or pornography or drugs, and they've really, in many ways, followed your journey of meeting with the living God.
Yes.
But they haven't had your for whatever reason, they haven't had that same miracle of no longer being addicted.
No.
Would you say it's still possible to be a Christian and an addict then?
Yes, absolutely. I'm obviously, because of my background, I speak to quite a number of people, and so they just have to be wise. Don't get into bad company. If you know there are certain people that could lead you astray, and you quite rightly say the principle is if someone struggles with lust, well, make sure you don't go onto any sites or whatever it might be. Know your own temptations. Every Christian is tempted with something.
So there's a sense in which many people become Christians with addictions, and actually what God gives them is wise people and wise ways in the Bible that helps them manage that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bad company corrupts good character. Bible principle there.
Yeah.
So put yourself in. So that's why fellowship is so important.
Yeah.
We need to build ourselves up. So private, read the Bible, pray every day. It's so basic, really. But so you're doing something positive. We're feeding ourselves with good things. And,
Hello?
Yep.
I think it's recognizing the dangers. If you're going somewhere and you're not strong enough, don't go there. Change the way of your life, change your habits. I think it goes hand. So, off and on again.
Yeah, and I imagine there's that sense in which the addict is someone. The addict who is a Christian is someone who understands the forgiveness of God. That, as you said, that existential reason, the reason for living, the reason for us being here, and in the midst of that addiction, there may be desperation, but there's that. I think the Bible describes it as underneath hand of God. That is always to forgive, to guide, to love. So you may be an addict, but knowing Jesus means
nothing changes. That's security we have, Phil. You're right. So you know your weakness, not just drinking now, but as Christians we all struggle with sin. It's a daily battle, and so we have that daily victory. And so read the Word, pray, get into good fellowship, and
So another question here is, you mentioned that there's a story with your fourth daughter. Can you tell us more about that one? Gwen, I'm going to throw that at you.
Oh, well, only jumping ahead now, 2 years after our conversion, we left Bournemouth, went to Wales, Mike went to Barry Bible College and trained for 3 years for the ministry. And in the first year, I really, we discussed, wouldn't it be wonderful to have a child? Now we're Christians and bring them up in the nurture of the Lord. We were bringing the others up, but just the whole thing. So, yeah, we had Rebecca. And, so that was a new, it's all different. And so very, very different because life was different and peaceful. So, yeah.
Wow. So it's a completely different. So, in many ways, that fourth child was one where you experienced raising a child in a completely different context, where once you were basically by yourself raising 3 girls, you had the opportunity to raise a child.
Yeah. It was seeing life in a completely different viewpoint, and the blessings of God, and
yeah.
But they've had to find their way. I mean, they've all professed faith to be baptized, but a couple of them struggle, So we would like to think that dad's been delivered and that, and but they're their own people. We can't make our kids Christians.
Yeah.
But
they're not kids anymore.
Yeah.
They're 40s.
So another question is, you mentioned that we live in a country with a Christian heritage, and so many people feel they're automatically Christians. What can help break through that misunderstanding?
Well, I think because there's so many religions that normally you're asked, what religion are you? So if you're none of the others, you put Christian, but it doesn't make you a Christian. It's Christ in us. That's what being a Christian is.
So there's a distinction between cultural Christian,
Yeah, definitely.
where we do the smells and bells and births, marriages and deaths, and this personal Christianity that you've been talking about, where God makes a connection with you, and it's through that personal, real joy. So here's a question: if a bus burst through randomly into here and ran us over, if you were to die now, what would happen?
Well, I'm absent from the body and present with the Lord. I think that's the great comfort.
So you believe that you meet Jesus?
Yes, it's certainly. I find it a great joy to take Christian funerals. It sounds a bit weird, but we went to one yesterday, Phil, and there was sadness there because a friend of ours lost his wife. But the joy of knowing that she's in heaven, she's with the Lord, there can be a reunion, is just the assurance that the Christian alone can have, not based, as you say, upon ourselves, but what Christ has done. Okay,
that's where I was going. I was going to say, why can you be so sure? Really?
It's a cross at the heart of everything, that Christ has done it all.
Okay.
That, one theologian spoke about the great exchange, that when Christ died on the cross, he was punished for my sin. My sin was laid on him. I have his goodness, his righteousness.
Yeah.
So, it's vital that we see it all flows from that. So I have good days, I have bad days, but at the end of the day, it's that Jesus Christ and his righteousness. Yeah. Because there's accusation all the time. The Bible speaks about the devil as an accuser. And he knows exactly what to do to show me I failed. But my complete confidence is in what Jesus has done. That never changes. So whether I've had a good day or a bad day, I'm going home to heaven one day.
Brilliant. Let me ask this question, because a lot of people, for some reason, feel we are owed a little bit of a musical interlude. Did you bring your trombone, and can you do a duet with us?
It would drive people out,
One of our grandchildren's got it. She does play the drums, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a no then. Well, that's a little bit of a shame. You've let us down there, but we can always invite you back for a trombone rendition.
Yeah.
I like this question. I think we're going to probably finish on this question as well. Quite a good observation. God is the true Lord of the Rings. Thank you, whoever. That's a nice little joke, particularly for those of us who are J.R. Tolkien fans. But the kind of serious bit of this question is, how do you hear God now, not so sensationally, when, to use your words, you're plodding through the Christian life? In other words, day to day.
It is such a depressing era we're living in. I mean, the news is so depressing. So I need to get God's word into me before I switch on the news or my app, you know. So it is just hearing God's voice through his word. And often it's a real struggle. I get up, I have my routine, I put the kettle on, have a cup of tea, thank God for some caffeine. But I get my Bible out, and so that's the routine. So I think it was C.T. Studd, a Christian missionary, said that the Christian life is made up of drudgery and monotony. So it is that plodding. Yeah. Occasionally God breaks in and speaks powerfully through his word, but I just need, the word of God has an effect whether I feel it or not, and so I need to get God's word in me before anything else in the day.
Well, thank you so much. I think what I'd like to just draw everyone's attention to is the toast rack on your tables has got loads of things on there that you might be interested in. So there are books. Please do take one of those. And if you want to, and if you want to find out more about Christianity, about who God is, just take one of those and read it at home. The other thing is, we've got this thing called Christianity Explored. That's on the flyer that asks, what is the best news you've ever heard? And what the great thing about Christianity Explored does is we go through the book of Mark together over a course of 6 evenings. And in many ways, what we come across in the book of Mark is people who are doing God by being very bad, like Mike used to. Someone who has said, I want God's stuff, and I want to do his stuff my way. I want to just take it all like a kid in a candy shop and have as much as I can. But then the Bible tells us there are other people who are doing God by being very good, trying to control God, like Gwen was, keep the family together, keep on doing the right things, even going to church and Sunday school, and maybe sort of proving to God that I'm not a bad person. And what the book of Mark tells us is, do you know that there's no such distinction with God? The great thing about God is he, as Jesus, has come into this world, and he says, follow me. Follow me. Whatever you're doing, wherever you are, you might be good girl Gwen or alcoholic Mike, you might be addicted to porn, you might be addicted to drugs, you might just be addicted to being a good girl or a good boy. Your life is altogether, etc., etc. You're doing God by saying, look, you're a little part of my life, but that's okay, and that's where it stops. I'll not have the God thing come into my life like this. But Mark says Jesus came into this world so we can all know God. The wonderful story we've heard is how God miraculously broke into 2 very broken lives. Mark tells us how Jesus broke into this world and shared the love of God with many broken lives, and can share the love of God with us too. And so can I invite you to join up, to just come along. The joy about Christianity Explored is that we look at Jesus. You make your own opinion. You make up your own mind about him. It's not, we're not there to Bible bash. We're there to have discussion. And can I invite you? Come along. It's 6 Monday evenings, and it's such a joy. It's such a joy. I'll be there, just helping and leading. And honestly, I've had every question from, who is God, to why this nonsense? Why can we trust this nonsense? And it's brilliant. I love it. So come along. And also, for those of us who have got families, we've got a light party at the end of the month. That's also a joy. And again, listen, if you want to find out more, maybe you don't want to come to Christianity Explored. Maybe just come along to the light party and grab someone with a lanyard and start quizzing them on the sly. That's a good place to start. Can I encourage you, though? Look, we've shared a great story. We've shared a great example of how God speaks to the ordinary. God speaks to the broken. And you know, my belief is that God doesn't do coincidences. In other words, we're not here randomly. We're not here, you know, because we accidentally got asked. We're here because God's invited us to hear about the good news. And my question to finish with is, you know, what next? If you don't know God, you've had the opportunity to hear about his personal, wonderful person. Can I encourage you to dig deeper? See this as his reach out to you and dig deeper. I'm going to finish there. And the last thing to say is, on your way out, there's a bookstall. There's some great books that you can buy as well. So you know, if you feel a little bit skint, grab one of these from your table and be proud about that. Or if you see a title of a book that you think, oh great, I like that title, grab it. There's a card reader at the door. Help yourself. But meanwhile, I believe there are plenty of nibbles on the tables that we can tuck into. More coffee's going to come round. Do just hang around. If you want to ask Gwen or Mike a question, you know, come and ask them, and they're willing to answer. If you want to ask me a question, I'm pretty happy to. If not, just chat on your tables. Enjoy the morning. And can we just say really big thank you to Mike and Gwen for coming all the way up. And last thing to say, please, children are upstairs, so don't forget them as well. Thank you.